Welcome back, Tribe. I have an episode here from CNBC, why so many young adults are living with their parents in the U.S. What's happening?
About 1 in 3 Americans between 18 and 34 years old live with their parents.
And while you may have heard more about this recently, this trend isn't new.
Between 2005 and 2015, the share just grew very steeply over this 10-year period. Since then, it's been fairly stable. There was an uptick, of course, during the pandemic. In the wake of the pandemic, those rates of parental co-residence are now about where they were right before. Part of the reason we see this escalation of young adults not leaving the nest or returning to the nest is this idea that it was harder and harder for them to weather shocks.
Nearly 30% of Gen Z said they would like to save, but don't make enough money. And roughly 2 in 5 millennials and Gen Z adults feel it's harder to build financial wealth now than when their parents were their age because of the economy. 27-year-old Victoria Franklin has been living with her mother in New Jersey since she graduated college in 2019.
I saw all of the money that I was saving, and I thought, maybe I should stay home for a little bit, and I didn't feel an urgency to move out.
Not everyone is enthusiastic about this trend.
You guys are making 6 figures together. You can't tell me you can't afford a house. They just don't want to spend their money.
Oh, yeah.
36% of Americans said in a 2022 survey that more young adults living with their parents is bad for society. So here's why young Americans are choosing to live with their parents and what the implications are for the U.S. economy.
My name is Victoria Franklin. I am 27 years old, and I live in my childhood home with my mother and my boyfriend.
Victoria graduated from the University of Miami in 2019 and moved in with her mom when she was looking for a job.
After I saw the cost of living and things like that after I graduated, that maybe I'd be home for about a year.
More than half of Gen Z adults say they don't make enough money to live the life they want due to high cost of living.
I ended up bartending and waitressing until October, where I got my first offer, so it did take a little bit longer than I expected. Currently live at the Jersey Shore, and I was commuting into New York City, which takes about 2 hours each way. And I thought, in 6 months or so, I'll move into the city, be closer to the job, and the pandemic threw a wrench in those plans.
Victoria now works a fully remote job, which she says she probably wouldn't have if it weren't for the pandemic. Without a commute to worry about, she was able to stay at her mom's for longer.
It's a lot harder for young people today to save up for, markers of the American dream than it was for previous generations. Part of the reason we see this escalation of young adults not leaving the nest or returning to the nest is this idea that it was harder and harder for them to weather shocks. And so, for example, like they suffered a layoff or they suffer some sort of health shock or they got in a car accident. If they didn't have any additional credit to weather that shock, they would end up moving back home. The financial stability of young adults, their ability to pay for things if they got into an emergency was one of the big factors influencing whether or not they were living on their own or living with their parents.
A significant number of Gen Z adults and millennials lack emergency savings. In fact, 46% of millennials and 32% of Gen Z have more credit card debt than emergency savings.
Of course,
this can have ramifications for setting up a financial future. Roughly 1 in 4 Gen Z adults say housing costs are one of the biggest challenges to financial success.
The prices of homes has escalated over the last few decades much faster than actual incomes. So it is actually much harder for a millennial or a Gen Z to save up for a down payment to buy a home. And that's something that bears out in the data.
The pandemic did have a lot to do with it. I saw how much I was saving, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't be paying, upwards of $3,000 a month and making somebody else richer when I could stay at home, save that money, and spend it on where I want to spend it. Between my job and my bartending and waitressing, I make anywhere from $85,000 to $95,000 a year.
What?
I would say about 40 to 50% of my salary is going right into savings. My mentality is, why rent and give my money to someone else when I can start to own? And so a big chunk of that money is going to go towards a down payment on a house.
Young adults ages 25 to 34
She's got a plan, and she's making close to $100K, and half of that's staying for savings. So at least, because that chart in the beginning was way worse. Look at this. Somehow men are staying at home at higher rates. It peaked almost to 40% in, what was that? Right around the pandemic, 2019, 2020, 40% as opposed to 31-ish%. Man, that's crazy. How are men doing worse than women? There are more guys that are failing to launch than women. That's crazy to me.
In high cost of living areas are more likely to live with their parents. Nearly 26% of young adults in New Jersey were living with at least one of their parents in 2022. The median,
also known as economically unviable males. Hey, it makes sense actually when you take that chart into account with the fact that 60% of women are going to college versus 40% of men, that the numbers have skewed so much in favor of them, that they have help everywhere, that they have programs that get them in, DEI, everything but the kitchen sink, basically. And then the men are just left, at the end of the line. Makes sense.
Household income in Oceanport, New Jersey, where the Franklins live, was nearly $133,000 in 2022, while the median value of a home in the region was around $644,000.
Jesus.
My dad built this house for $350,000 and was making probably $10,000 to $15,000 less than I was. My mom wasn't working at the time, and they were able to afford a $350,000 house on a $70,000 a year salary with a son. And that's not even the American dream anymore. That's not even possible. My aunt, who I fight with all the time, is always saying how you have to give somewhere, right? And my cousin said something to her the other day and said, we're giving everywhere. We don't get property. We don't get good school systems. Whatever we're trading off is too much to trade off.
Victoria had brought up some conflict with her aunt a few times.
Oh, this is my Aunt Judy.
So I asked Aunt Judy to come on over and talk to us.
I talked about how much we fight about millennials, yes, but millennials living at home, and how you always say, well, you have to sacrifice something, but how much we're
And here comes the boomer takes of you're just lazy and you're not working hard enough. Here we go.
sacrificing. Like, we don't get like a big property, or we don't get like a nice house, or it's not in a good school system.
You have to start somewhere. You have to start anywhere. Just start your portfolio is what I told you. I don't care what it is. You don't have to live in Oceanport your first time.
No, but you were able to live in Oceanport the first time.
Okay, I guess it was different times.
Gen X and baby boomers may have a tougher time understanding what young adults are going through today because they enjoyed, until the pandemic recession hit, a solid almost 15 years of uninterrupted economic expansion. Baby boomers, Gen X, they weathered many economic downturns, including major recessions. But I think the big difference is that when they were starting to form their own households and starting to accumulate wealth, housing and higher ed were both more affordable relative to their incomes than they are now.
When I started out, I was making $35,000 a year. That was nothing. And he was making $35,000 a year. You guys are making six figures together. You can't tell me you can't.
She can't do basic math with inflation. So she was making 35 starting out. Her husband was 35 starting out. So that's 70 right there. 70 back in her day allowed them to get that house that's now worth probably well over $1 million that they're living in right now, to the tune of $350,000. Can you believe it?
Can't afford a house. They just don't want to spend their money.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
No, I don't know.
Do you want it? What was my first house? 250, maybe 270.
Damn.
That doesn't exist anymore. Where am I finding a $270,000
I'm
house?
not making $35,000 a year. Combined, we made 70.
In 1995, $70,000 was the equivalent of $145,000 today.
Oh.
Yeah, look
Oh,
at that.
she said.
See?
We do also have a situation that what is really good for an individual person or an individual family is not necessarily good for the entire macroeconomy.
The Federal Reserve estimates in a 2019 paper that young adults who move out of their parents' house would spend around $13,000 more per year on things such as housing, food, and transportation.
One of the big boosts to consumer spending is when people form households. Whether you're a renter or a buyer, you need to furnish that house. You need to fix things up in the home to make it livable. You end up spending a lot of money during that time. So if the pace of household formation slows down,
I mean, it's irrelevant. Sorry. Home ownership, yes, it's expensive. Yes, there's maintenance. Yes, you have to get furniture and all that stuff, but it's offset by obviously the multiples that the house grows over the decades in value. This is their way of coping about the fact that no, here's the actual issue. It's like a roundabout. It's because, homeownership's expensive. So like once you get a house, you're going to have to spend so much money on furnishing, even when you're renting. So it's like, it makes sense that you can't afford a home because you're going to need extra income. It's like, dude, your parents had the same fucking problem. And again, their couches weren't worth $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. They could go get a couch for $200. They could furnish their whole house for a quarter of what you have to spend. Everything is inflated, not just housing. Furniture is inflated, groceries, gas, you name it. What else is there that's left for the average person after, take home pay, after taxes to spend money on? You have a spouse that's working alongside you, and then half of her or a majority of her income will go to just childbearing costs or just daycare, something like that. Imagine, like daycare will take up the majority of the second person's income. So it's like she's going to work for no reason just to pay somebody to watch her kid. Make it make sense, dude. It really does.
And that's going to slow down the pace of consumer spending, and that will produce a drag on the economy.
Another issue is that there aren't enough affordable properties in popular areas for younger people who are in
Because it doesn't make economic sense for the builders. I used to be in remodeling and construction. These guys are only putting up luxury homes, luxury condominiums, luxury townhouses, luxury apartments. Why? Because they could charge a premium even for the word luxury. Just making it sound like it's luxurious, and it's not. It's built like a piece of shit. A tin box full of matches. That's it, man. It's crap. Housing in America, the way they're building shit there is just prop it up as fast as you can, as cheaply as you can, and then slap the label of like XYZ Heights, blah, 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 Meadows, luxury bluffs, blah, blah. It's bullshit. Terrible. Build quality sucks, paper thin walls, and they're charging you an arm and a leg for it. And they're making a ton of money because, first of all, the high density units do the best. So why build one unit on one property, aka a house, when you could just build up an apartment complex or some condos and make 50x? So that is why, especially in the Atlanta area or the Phoenix area or some of these other high density areas, I'm sure the guys that live around there will notice nothing but luxury townhouses and apartment complexes are sprouting up. Anything for like a starter home or a middle class family or anything, decent apartments, nothing luxurious, don't exist anymore. You're going to get the old rundown shit, and even the old rundown shit is being bought by property management companies from out of state, renovated and slapped with the luxury label. So even the shitty places are being renovated and sold off as shitty or luxury to everybody else. That's crazy, man. The locals are being priced out dramatically, and then these other people come in from out of town, I don't know from where, with their out of town jobs and are displacing everybody. The gentrification, I guess you could call it. It's not really gentrification. It's just movements within the economy where there's hot pockets all over America that are expanding and some places are dying. They're like decaying economic zones. So money is constantly moving within the United States. And right now, Atlanta is one of those hot markets. Phoenix is one of those hot markets. Austin, Texas is one of those hot markets. Miami, the rest of Florida was one of those hot markets. So money's pouring in there from all over the country, propping up these luxury builds. And the locals are like completely priced out. They're forced to move to the periphery of the city. And everybody else prices start to skyrocket. And the effect just isn't on housing. You'll get all these posh coffee shops, these posh pastry shops, grocery stores, all this bullshit. Prices just skyrocket. They get jacked way up across the board for everything for no reason. It's kind of insane, man, but it's happening at a faster clip too. Nobody is safe nowhere unless you go out into the boonies in the middle of nowhere and you got to lay down, your own power lines and shit like that. Got to pay the city to come do sewage for you and all this shit. Like, that's it, dude. That's it. You got to give up so much in order to find, good value for your dollar anymore. Because where are the good jobs? In these exact places I just told you. All the high paying jobs are in these markets. You're not going to get a high paying job in your small bumfuck town. Like, some guys are in the comments like, well, I just live in the boonies like me. I live in the middle of fucking nowhere. I don't have a single neighbor for like 2 miles. Yeah, bro. And there's not a job anywhere fucking within 50 miles of you. What kind of shit is that? Unless you have some sort of online remote work where you can just get Elon's satellite internet dished straight down to your house, you're done for. What are you going to live off? Your land? And you sell off fucking cow milk and shit? I mean, what is there? Average person needs to work for a company which is always located in a high density area, which means you're paying up the ass to live somewhat reasonable distance away from work. It's not economically feasible anymore, dude. It really isn't.
Entry-level jobs and making less money.
Any sort of housing policy needs to be multi-pronged. Are there homes that are at the price point of these prospective home buyers? What can we do to increase the housing supply? What can we do to build? What can we do to help elder Americans, to help them downsize and move into more right-sized homes that will open up larger homes for young families? And so I think one alone is not really going to do it. We've got to look both at demand as well as supply.
The other major factor here is how much.
Also, the builders learned from the last recession that the hardest homes that get hit or the builds are those middle and lower income classes. Luxury homes still sell even in a recession or a downturn in the market. Why? Because they have buyers from like all over the place, even internationally. You go into any rich person's neighborhood, those mega mansions, those super pristine, well-kept, well-preened lawns and all that shit, those houses in those neighborhoods are all sold. Every luxury mansion they build is fucking getting sold quickly. They don't stay on the market for long. Why? Because rich people just have money. They make money during downturns, upswings. It doesn't matter, dude. They have so much capital to deploy that when they want something like a new luxury house, a vacation home, they'll fucking swipe up and buy that shit without even thinking. Boom, purchase, done. It is what it is. As opposed to like you have your lower class starter home and it's like, you know, downturn in the market hits and everybody's penny pinching, scrounging up the change that they have to just survive. Rich people don't do that shit during recessions or hard times. They have cash to deploy, significant amounts of capital. And that's when they purchase a lot because they get discount deals. It is what it is, bro. If I was a builder, I'd be doing the same thing as all the other builders are doing. Why? Because it makes economic sense, because my company would survive that way. And, you know, I don't know what the answer to this shit is, apart from the whole NIMBY stuff that's going on in the cities where the city doesn't allow low-income housing to be built because the locals are voting that shit out and they rather have, obviously luxury stuff being built around them to raise their own property prices around themselves. So they benefit from it, but at the expense of kind of everybody else. So I don't know. City councils have to fix that shit, but they won't. So here we are. You will own nothing and you will be happy. So they say.
How much student loan debt young Americans have? 59% of U.S. adults say they delayed financial milestones because of their student debt.
I do have a student loan payment. It's about $480 a month. So that's my largest expense.
That's not bad at
The
all.
liability could be worse for Black borrowers, who tend to have higher than average student loan debt and less wealth than white counterparts. Black and Hispanic respondents were more likely to say that debt was holding them back from reaching financial milestones. Less than half of white respondents said the same. The amount of debt young adults held also rose substantially between 2005 and 2014, during that period of strong escalation in that cohort living with their parents.
Aggregate student loans are such an enormous part of the economy now. And that's not a reflection of younger people making bad choices with their education. It's really a consequence in large part due to the fact that there's less public funding and going to college just is more expensive, which makes it even harder for even those college grads who are hoping to get earning more money as a result of their college degrees.
Student loan debt by
Yeah, but their college degrees are useless. They're being indoctrinated into woke-ass subjects, whatever it is that they're covering, that has no basis in the real world. So they end up going to school like indefinitely, getting a master's degree now. And then you have the ghost jobs. And those jobs want you to have experience like 5 years to learn some, program that just got invented 2 years ago. We were making that joke and some people confirmed that was the case in the comment section. So they want you to be extra experienced for an entry-level job. That's paradoxical because it's an entry-level job. You have no experience. So companies just don't want to train you. They're just harvesting your data to sell it. Most of the real jobs got shipped overseas, or the H-1B visas are being filled with cheap overseas workers rather than hiring Americans. And, you graduate from college with this debt that's not dischargeable on your back. That's the size of a mortgage. And then you're told to go out into this workforce and good luck, buddy. Once we've ripped you for all this money, by the way, the job that you were expecting to have doesn't exist anymore. Oh, but here's LinkedIn. Go apply to 100 jobs. Oh, we just harvested your data 100 times and you got maybe one call back. And then you failed the automated AI, scrubbing test of the job application because you answered one question wrong. Or you put that you were a man instead of a woman, or that you weren't black, or some other DEI woke bullshit that's literally stopping your application from going through. It's insane. It's like, what do you do? All that's really left is like working in the trades with your own hands, some highly specialized career that require, like surgeon or something, some form of engineering, right? Highly specialized stuff, lawyer, postdoctorate stuff. Okay, and then what? All that's left is some sort of entrepreneurial thing. Like you must become self-employed. Like, for example, how you learn how to do woodworking or roofing or something. You start your own roofing company with you and a buddy or some shit like that. And it's like, okay, that's the entrepreneurial answer or the self-employed answer. And what's left? The gig economy now. So we got our shitty low-paying jobs that we're forced to take. And then we need a gig on the side just to make ends meet. By the way, you're stuck in this loop where you're paying most of this money to high rent because all these investment firms bought up every single house that you would have otherwise afforded, driving up prices and rents across the board. Factor in some inflation. And what do you have left after taxes? Fucking nothing. How do you ever get ahead? You don't. Everybody's feeling like they're in a death loop. Like they're working for literally the next day, paycheck to paycheck, bro. Ends are not adding up. People don't have any more money to do shit anymore. And it's all being concentrated at the top. It got exacerbated post-COVID. We had the largest upward transfer of wealth from the middle class to the upper class in the history of this country. So many small businesses were closed. So many self-employed people, just employee of one, just you yourself working for yourself. Businesses were closed down because they were non-essential, right? So many people got fired because they refused to take some medicine. So many people lost everything that they've ever built for during that time period and were never able to get it back. Nobody talks about that shit. We printed so much money for the so-called stimulus, and now it's biting us in the ass through inflation, which anybody with half a brain could have told you was going to happen. And people want to act surprised, dude. Guys, I'm telling you, the next 2 years or so, like 2025, 26, is going to be some pain. Be ready. Bat down the hatches. All right? I'm telling you guys, like all the financials don't look good. The reports don't look good. Interest rates are creeping up. We covered that in the last episode. Or we're going into 8% and higher mortgage rates despite basis cuts month over month from the Fed. They've lost control of the markets. Investors are no longer confident in the government that they're going to be able to curtail government debt. We're spiraling out of control, and it's plain for everybody to see. Just put your hand in your pocket and see all the lint, because there's no more dollars left. And they tell us we're crazy. Every month they'll have a jobs report out, or they'll have like a whatever economic reports telling us how great inflation is now under control, 2%, transitory. We just added 1 million jobs. 4 months later, they're like, wait, we got to downward revise. We didn't actually add 1 million jobs. We actually lost 100,000. How the fuck did that happen? Unemployment numbers are cooked. Everything. It's bullshit. While you're hurting, somehow companies are posting record profits. How the fuck does that happen? While you're hurting, somehow the stock market is reaching like multi-fucking year highs. How does that happen? How's the stock market performing so well? Wall Street's crushing it, but Main Street is getting crushed. It makes no sense. It's a game of musical chairs, and it's going to stop real soon. Just be ready. If it is what they say it's going to be, 08, 09 is going to look like a cakewalk. In the comments say, cost of living increases, but income does not. This is rocket science to older people. Should have bought a house in 1988 instead of going to kindergarten. What was I thinking? Be grateful you have parents that you could stay with. Some of us don't have that luxury. And this is a good one. No one talks about how upper middle classes who live outside their parents' home are actually being financially supported by the parents. That's actually very true. And this one says, you chose a well-fed, that's a funny way of putting it, Mercedes driving, work from home person as an example of someone struggling. MSNBC levels of delusion. These people in this video do not represent those of us who are actually struggling. Man, I struck a chord with people. WTF, this woman has a well-paying remote job, lives in a nice home in a nice neighborhood, drives a Mercedes, no kids. Both her and her boyfriend make 6 figs combined. They all share bills. How is this struggling? Look at this one. This woman is not struggling. Incredibly lucky. She lives in a spacious house, in a safe neighborhood, has good relations with her parents, a boyfriend, well-paid remote job, drives a Benz. Most people in the world can only dream of such a life. If you want to show struggling people, go talk to the many badly paid in-person workers who has to commute 2 hours a day and needs 2 roommates to be able to pay the rent. Facts. You won't get that part of America. It's not attractive to show the plebs the reality of their life. They might revolt. Yeah. Anywho, thoughts on this episode below, boys. Appreciate you for tuning in. If you haven't, check out the second channel. Subscribe to one of the videos up here. If you haven't seen them already, might strike a chord with you. And if you are interested, join us on the private community. Links in the description below as always. And thank you for tuning in yet again. See you on the next one.